Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Multiple Careers Podcast. This is episode number 5, and in today's episode, I want to share with you how I broke free from the 9 to 5. Honestly, I am super excited about this podcast episode. It's been something that I wanted to talk about for a long time, and it's really important to me. And the reason is because I know that there are so many people out there who have this dream of leaving their full-time job to go out there and start something completely different. Changing their career or even starting in a totally different industry. But for some reason, they just can't find the courage to actually do it and actually make it happen. And they're kind of stuck in that situation. And that's really sad and depressing. I totally get it because I've been there myself. And perhaps you listening right now, perhaps you are in a similar kind of situation. Perhaps you've been thinking for a while about whether or not to leave your job behind, to switch to a different career, to start something different, work in a job, in a career that is much more fulfilling and meaningful to you, but you still have all these worries, all these question marks, and all these concerns. So I really hope that by sharing my experience today, that it could be useful for you in making your decision going forward, and also figuring out how you will go about this journey, this process of leaving your 9 to 5. So I just want to share with you a bit about my own story. I've actually left my 9 to 5 job 10 years ago. Wow, I know, it's a long time ago. Actually, it was just yesterday that I realized that it has been 10 years. I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about on my next podcast, and then it dawned on me that, wow, I've actually not worked in a full-time job for about 10 years. Wow, this actually worked. Like at that time when I quit my job, I was actually afraid, and I was asking myself, would this ever work out? I mean, would I ever need to just go back to my full-time job again because nothing worked out and I failed at anything? But it turned out not to be the case. In the end, everything worked out just fine. I mean, it was never perfect, it was never easy, but it worked out. I actually accomplished my goal of leaving the 9 to 5 and not having to go back again to it. But that being said, there are some things that I would have done differently and better. I mean, it's not that I regret my decision. I do not regret my decision at all. In fact, I think that was one of the best decisions that I made in my entire life. But there are some things that I would have done differently that would have enabled me to perhaps leave the 9 to 5 even earlier, and that would have helped me to make the journey much less painful and much easier. So I hope that this will be useful to you, and let's just get straight into it. The first thing had to do with my financial situation. At that time when I left my job, my 9 to 5 corporate job, I had already saved up quite a bit of money. It was actually quite a big chunk of money, and that covered me for the years to come. I actually had enough money so that I could live off of the interest by putting it in a bank. But before you're wondering how in the world I did it, full disclosure, this is what happened. I was working in Singapore, earning my Singaporean dollars there. But after I quit my job, I actually moved back to Indonesia, where my parents are from. And over there, Indonesia is a third world country in Southeast Asia, by the way, the living costs are much, much lower. It's about half, or you could even go down as low as a third of what you would spend in North America or in Europe. And the interest rate over there, if you put your money there in a bank, is also much higher. At that time, you could easily get around 7% guaranteed per annum there. So that generated enough interest income for me to simply live off of that. And I didn't have to worry about my income. I didn't have to worry about how to pay the bills, and that was taken care of. But of course, had I not moved back to Indonesia, but had I moved to Germany or to North America, Canada, the United States instead, then that would not have been possible. Then my money would only cover my expenses, I would say, for the next 2 or 3 years. So what would I have done differently? I think you can guess it. If I could go back to that time, I would have saved up more money. So while I was still in my job working in the bank, instead of spending my money on clothing, on eating out and things that didn't have any real value to me in the long term, I would have saved up more money. So this is something important to consider. How much money do you want to have saved up by the time you quit your job? And it's not that easy of a decision to make because there is actually no limit as to how much money you can save up. You can just go on and on until you reach financial independence, until you saved up $1 million and then quit your job. But of course, there is also some opportunity cost. Of course, you can wait and extend your time working in your full-time corporate job until 10 years from now, but you will have lost all the time in between, the time that you could have used to pursue your other interests and develop your other skills. So I think that you really have to find the sweet spot. What is the ideal amount of money that you want to save up that will put your mind at ease, that you think will be enough for you? Let's go on to the second one. The second one has to do with my spending habits. At the time that I quit my job, I was able to live very frugally. So that happened over time. When I first started working in the corporate world, I was splurging a lot on eating out, buying stuff, you know the drill. But after a while, once I had this goal of wanting to leave the corporate world one day in the near future, hopefully, I decided that, okay, something has to change with my spending habits. And that is when I started to try and live more frugally and not to participate in a consumptive lifestyle that most people had. And that was challenging in the beginning because, you have friends who want you to go out with them and have these expensive dinners and go on expensive trips. But over the time, I just learned to say no to that because I had this bigger goal in mind. I had this goal of quitting my job quite soon so I could pursue what was truly meaningful to me. And once I quit my job and I moved back to Indonesia, I didn't even get my own place. I had, I would say, the humility to move into my aunt's and uncle's place, and I just rented a room there. I just rented a room there that had a bathroom, and they really charged me a very, very small rent. And that is how my money really went a long way. So before you quit your job or when you're about to quit your job, start adjusting your spending habits. Don't wait until you quit your job and then start being more frugal and starting to save, but start that much earlier. Start that even 1 year or even longer before you quit your job, because once you quit your job, it will be much easier on you if you already have that habit in place, if you're already used to being frugal and not spending too much money on unnecessary things and so on. Let's go on to the next one. The next thing was that I had a purpose. You might be asking me how I had the courage to finally leave my 9-to-5 job. And honestly, I didn't have it at the beginning. In the beginning, I was really scared out of my mind. Although I had money saved up, I was scared about what would happen in the coming years. Would I be able to succeed at what I wanted to do? But because I had this strong purpose, I had a strong reason why I wanted to leave this job, why I had to leave the 9-to-5. That was actually what gave me the strength to go through with it. And my purpose at that time was that I wanted to become an entrepreneur. I no longer wanted to be an employee working for a company, working for their goals, but instead of doing that, I wanted to have my own vision. I wanted to define my own goals. I wanted to find my own way of how I personally wanted to contribute to society. And I wanted to do that in an independent, autonomous, and entrepreneurial way. for me, it was not only about the end goal, but also about the process. I knew that I had to do this. I had to go on this journey to make myself to become a better person. Okay, so what would I have done differently? I think that I would have tried to be more realistic about my goals because, of course, it's great if you have a clear purpose, if you have a mission, if you have all these goals in place, but it helps if these are more realistic because it helps manage your expectations. Because sometimes if you have too many large and ambitious goals, it can have a counterproductive effect. Because, of course, everything takes time, especially if you have 10 goals, you cannot expect to achieve all of them perfectly in a matter of 1 to 2 years. And if you have too many goals, but then you notice that you don't achieve all of them and you fail at many of them, then in the end, it can be a bit disheartening. And in the end, you can feel a bit demotivated about it. So if I could go back, what I would do is set myself fewer goals, more realistic goals, and simply give myself more time to learn and to process everything. Let's go on to the next thing. The next thing has to do with mindset and supporting relationships. So there is one really important mindset that I had after I left my 9 to 5, and that was what enabled me to stay free from the 9 to 5. And that was that I had an experimentation mindset when it came to money. So this was what happened. When I left my job, my plan was that I wanted to set up a business and then earn a profit from that and be able to live off of that. But in reality, what happened was that my first business kind of failed. I broke even, but I never achieved a significant profit. So what some people might have done in that case was to decide to just go back to the 9 to 5 again because, okay, that failed, that didn't work out, so maybe I'm not meant to do that and just go back. Maybe because you need the money. But what really helped me was that I had this experimentation mindset for earning money. And this is what I mean. Even though this one thing that I had initially planned, that I initially intended to generate money and income from me didn't work out, I didn't stop there. I was flexible enough to go out there and find different ways to earn money, to generate money. And this also means embracing opportunity that you might have not expected would come your way. What I did, for example, that I never expected that I would ever do was that I flipped a house. So shortly after I returned to Indonesia, I and my soon-to-be husband at that time, we actually bought a house that was priced far below market value. So with the money we had, we decided to buy that house, and then we carried out a bunch of renovations, which I oversaw myself. I actually oversaw the renovation for about 6 months. And then it took us a while to eventually sell the house. But when we did sell the house, we sold it at a very large profit. It was over 100%. It was 150% or even more. I hope that I'll be able to tell you more about this experience in another podcast episode. But we earned quite a lot of money from doing that and had another stash of money that was able to sustain us for the coming years. And that would not have been possible had I not been open to other avenues of earning money. Had I just stuck to this one thing that I had to earn money doing this business, selling these products, then I might have already returned to my 9 to 5. Talking about my soon-to-be husband at that time, what's also super important is to have a partner who's on board with your plans. So in case you are already in a serious relationship, but you're planning to leave your job soon and start something new, try and get your spouse, your partner on board as soon as possible, because trust me, you will definitely need the support of the other person. You don't want to get into a situation where the other person doesn't agree, or even worse, doesn't support you, and that will result in another big problem. And in case you are not in a relationship yet, or you're in the process of looking for someone, but at the same time you know that you want to leave your full-time job soon and become self-employed, then keep that in mind when you're getting to know new people, when you're talking to someone. Of course, that doesn't have to be the first thing that you want to talk about. You don't want to immediately scare off someone, but once you've dated for a while, once you get to know the person a bit better, then you might want to start and be open about your plans, talking about the kind of life that you envision, that you might not want to stay in your current well-paying job for much longer, but that you are planning to take this risk and embark on a totally new journey, and then see what that person has to say, right? The last thing that I want to talk about and share with you today is that at that time I had a countdown plan. I had a concrete plan of how and when I wanted to leave my job. I had a plan about all the things that I had to have in place before I quit my job, and that, among others, included having those savings in place that I talked about in the beginning. But part of that plan was also that I set myself the condition that I already have to have experimented with some of the things that I would focus on once I quit my job. And in that time, that included acting. So I didn't say that, okay, let's just quit our job and then try and pursue acting. No, I started acting in short films and independent films way before I quit my job, about 1.5 years before that. So I actually already got into the industry, I had a peek into it, and I had a good idea of what it looked like. So that was one of the conditions. I wanted to do that before I quit my job. So once I quit my job, I would not be starting from zero, but I would already have my foot half in the door at least. But the other thing was that I had a countdown plan, and man, that was so much fun. I really hope that one day I can pull it up from my archive and share it with you guys. So this countdown plan was basically a plan that spanned for about 6 months or 4 months. I have to check it out again. But basically it detailed out month by month what I had to do and how many days I had left until I would quit my job and hand in that resignation letter. And it was such a joy to every week go look at that countdown plan and strike off a week and see how I progressed and how few weeks or days there were left until I could finally say goodbye to this industry and to this job. So that is how I finally escaped my 9 to 5. Those are the things that I had in place that helped me to finally break free from the corporate cubicle. I really hope that this was useful to you if you are in the process of trying to leave your full-time job yourself and trying something new. And of course, this is not the whole story. I left out a lot of details, and there is so much more that I could share with you. In case you are listening to this on YouTube, then feel free to drop your comments and questions down below in the comments section. And very importantly, let me know which part of the story of leaving my 9 to 5 would you want me to share more about in one of the next episodes. I want to thank you so much for listening. And I also want to let you know that no matter where you are, at what point you are right now in your life, no matter what challenges you are facing at the moment, remember that it is never too late to make some kind of change, even the smallest, tiniest change that can propel you into a totally different direction, that can have the potential to make your life more fulfilling, more meaningful, and eventually happy. So I wish you all the very best, and I hope to see you in the next episode.